How is it that a game with over 100,000 wishlists completely underperformed to mixed reviews, making only a tiny fraction of its expected millions? Okay, at this point everybody knows why this game performed the way it did, so I'm just gonna cut to the chase. In case you're not up to speed, Gavin has been working on Cuffbust for about 3 years. It's a multiplayer collaborative prison escape game, and it had one map which I'm told takes about 10 minutes to complete, and it launched with DLC, and it had a base price of $20 that had to be reduced to $10. If you look at the Steam reviews, the main thing that upset people was the lack of content and the inability to play as the guards. If you want a more detailed analysis, CodeMonkey's video is pretty much all you need. The problem is most people are learning the wrong lessons and drawing the wrong conclusions from this situation. A lot of us, myself included, were really excited to learn from Gavin as he demystified the one thing that indie game developers dread: marketing. Gavin had indie game marketing down to a science, and even big names like David Whaley, Thomas Brush, and Jonas Tyroller could tell that he was onto something. If you spend any time learning the business side of game dev, you've almost certainly heard of the triple Venn diagram that says you have to make a game you want to make, a game you can finish, and a game you can sell. Well, Gavin's videos were helping us to take that game of our dreams and transform it into something that's actually marketable. But here's where things start to go wrong, because remember, there are 3 circles to that triple Venn diagram. The more you focus on one, the less attention the other 2 get. Implementing all the ideas Gavin talked about in his retention videos or his survival instinct videos, plus figuring out which of those instincts are underrepresented in games, is going to heavily bloat the marketing side of those circles, moving farther and farther away from the game you actually want to make. And the more features you add, the farther and farther you move from maintaining a reasonable scope. And of course, Cuffbust represents both of those problems. Gavin has talked quite openly about how he's not passionate about the game, and the scope was so big even with how little content there ended up being. Even after nearly 3 years, he still had difficulty getting proximity voice chat right. But here's what I meant when I said we're drawing the wrong conclusions. At this point, you would easily dismiss what Gavin did as a mistake you're never going to make, and looking at someone else's mistake can easily turn into a partial self-congratulatory attitude that is far from warranted. Marketing a game is still really unintuitive to most people, and there's still a lot to learn from Gavin on that front. As for scope, well, the biggest time sink for Gavin was definitely not the cosmetics, it was the fact that the game was multiplayer, which is something notoriously difficult for indies to deal with and something that every other new indie still wants to do. So all of this leaves us with the same frustrations as always. How do you come up with an idea that you can sell, and how do you know if you can finish it? And how can you possibly do all that while avoiding turning the game into a purely pragmatic product that you don't even want to make anymore? And I think the heart of the issue is just that. Not stuffing your game full of features that appeal to the right survival instincts, or even stuffing it with features that you really want that only bloat the scope, because the real way to make your game good is to narrow down the idea and find an aspect of it that you're truly passionate about. Doing this actually makes the game very natural to sell. You're not forcing it to become marketable. It is marketable because since the idea becomes so specific, you zero in on a concept that people haven't seen explored in that much detail before. Narrowing your idea down enables you to build a game you're passionate about, maintaining a manageable scope with built-in appeal that your players will love. But the question remains, how in the world do you transform your game idea into something like that? This is something that I've been thinking about for a long time, and it's something that I know a lot of other devs would want to know about. By this point, there are a lot of resources out there to learn indie game marketing. The actual process is pretty easy. You just send your demo to 1,000 YouTubers, you get wishlists, and you launch. The real challenge is taking your bloated, overscoped idea and turning it into something that fits those 3 success criteria. So how do we do that? Well, we take all of Gavin's advice from Ciencio Ludos, combine it with Chris Sokowski's genre research, and then cross that with an analysis of what you are actually passionate about, because most people think that they have themselves all figured out and don't actually think critically about what they like. And what you end up with is a game idea that excites you, that's appealing, and has a tight scope, and fits into a genre that works on Steam. Okay. So how does that look? Well, it looks like this. This is what I've come up with that distills all that game dev advice out there, and it turns it into something that's actually practical. Because for all of Gavin's intense analysis into game virality, the average game developer just doesn't need that level of visibility. What that developer needs is a way to tighten the scope of his game idea. Because, as it turns out, adding features is not what makes your game more unique. Unless you're Gavin and you can predict trends from other industries or whatever, most of us don't need that. Most of us need to remove the bloat, tighten our idea, and make it more specific. And maybe isolating what Gavin was truly passionate about would have helped him too. Then we have to apply that idea to a genre. These are literally just the genres that Chris Sokowski analyzed, and to my surprise there turns out to be a massive variety. And these genres are also way easier to make than the other ones that we usually want to make, because they rely a lot less on content and a lot more on systems that are repeatable. Finally, you write out the actions the player will take in the game, and these derive from your core fantasy, so it makes sure that the scope is as small as possible and no bigger than it needs to be. If you want more details about this, check out the link in the description to the workshop. This process really helped Shockwave to narrow down his game idea, and it also help Natty, Eggroll, Jeremy, Gnome, and Coca-Cola, who tried an earlier version of the process. You'll get the workbook and, more importantly, video explanations that go super deep into all of this so that you can come up with the perfect version of your indie game idea. So go check that out in the description. Now let's talk about one more very important concern that I have with Cuffbust and his reception. So Gavin worked on this game for 3 years. For the majority of those years, he had no love for the concept. It was a concept purely built for marketing, and the marketing worked. There's no two ways about it. It wasn't just his Choo Choo Charles clout, though that was a big part of it. It was also the Steam algorithm. See, the steady line of followers means that the algorithm was constantly promoting the game, whereas these momentary bumps are probably from events or devlogs. Gavin expected to make millions of dollars off this game, knowing that it would have been worth spending 3 years on a game even if you're not passionate about it, even if you don't enjoy what you do. But that obviously didn't happen. For Gavin's game, the reasons are obvious by now, but what about for the rest of us? Those of us who are spending 3 years making games that definitely won't make millions. That's what I was doing with my Robin Hood game. I was very passionate about it, and I was essentially working on it purely as a passion project. Yeah, I wanted to make money, and I thought I could do a Kickstarter or something, but I realized eventually that it would just take way too long, and even though I could get it done, I couldn't reach the quality level that Steam players wanted. So what the game turned into, because I scaled it way back, has a very low chance of making any reasonable amount of money. And even though I was passionate about it at first, if I was really honest about it, I would say that I wasn't motivated to work on it after less than a year. I wasn't working on it because I enjoyed working on it. I was working on it because I wanted the end result. And I knew that no matter what I did, the end result wouldn't be what I imagined. So I urge you to ask yourself that too. After a year of working on your game, do you feel like you have to force yourself to stay motivated, or are you actually enjoying the process? For myself, thankfully, I found another outlet for my creativity that I actually do enjoy, which is writing, so I'm seeing if it'll be possible to switch into that. But for those of you who actually want to make games, please consider how much time you're spending on something that you don't actually enjoy doing. That's why I urge everyone to think about how long your motivation actually lasts and build your game around that. If it's a year, aim to make a 6-month game, because a game usually takes twice as long to make than you expect. If your motivation only lasts 6 months, aim to make a 3-month game. Personally, my motivation in game dev is becoming shorter and shorter, leading me to think maybe a different creative field is better suited to me after all. But ultimately, that is the true limit of indie game marketing. You can market your game, earn over 100,000 wish lists. You can even make a product that players appreciate and make those millions. But if you did it by spending hours of your days, years of your limited lifespan, not even enjoying it, dreading opening your game engine, not spending time with your family or friends, not praying, not exercising, not growing in any capacity except in the willingness to do something you dread that won't even make you money, is that really time well spent? Is that really a fulfilling, worthwhile life? I encourage you to take the time to think about how much you love game dev, how strategic you want to be with it, how you can work on your game in a limited, reasonable capacity to make it worth it, to really enjoy not only the money that may or may not come, but actually enjoy the process and make something truly creative and simpler than maybe you wanted to initially. And for those of you who do want to make money and learn how to tighten your scope, I do encourage you to check out that workshop, link below. Best of luck in your indie game journey. Thanks so much for watching, and God bless.